Hi, welcome to Comic Talk. I'm Josh.
And I'm Drew.
That was very authoritative.
Mm-hmm.
This is our series review of the Batman and Robin Eternal ongoing that's currently ongoing.
Yes.
We are 6 issues into this, and at the moment it's pretty easy to get a hold of. They've printed a bajillion copies of all this, so we thought we'd grab it, take a look at it at this point, and let you know what we think.
Yeah, it's only been out 6 weeks, so...
Right. Yeah, 6 weeks. Pretty much anywhere I've looked. We only have a couple comic shops here in town where we're at, but they've had all of it at both. I checked about a week ago or so.
Cool.
So it's pretty easy to get a hold of, and we're going to talk about this and what we think so far. So first of all, this is Tynion IV, Tynion Iv, Tynion the Fourth, and Snyder doing the writing here. And I'd tell you who the art is, but it's like 400,000 different artists. It's one of those.
Yeah.
We get Tony Daniels a lot. He seems to be doing the bulk of the work, but we've got so many different other people that are hopping in and doing. Mm-hmm. Even within a single issue, we'll have 4 or 5 different people. They'll do like 5 or 6 pages each. So.
Yeah, and there's some recognizable people in here. Seeley did some, and got some. Orlando did a couple. Miles Morales.
Yeah.
Came in on issue 6, and he's been really knocking it out of the park, so that's good.
Yeah, there's... interestingly, first of all, because we're just talking about the art, it's been interesting that even though there's a lot of different artists on this, it hasn't detracted from the flow of the story for me.
No, not at all. It's been relatively consistent, so I don't know if they just have a lot of direction that they're working off of in order to maintain this cohesive feel. But I read Batman Eternal before this, and this is probably going to come up a lot, but there were a lot of issues where the art just like didn't fit at all, and it just ended up really pissing me off because they were trying to do this. Well, I mean, they had a vision, and I just didn't feel like it worked out. Is long and short of it. But this seems a lot more cohesive than that, and the artwork and beyond that. But since we're on the artwork,
sure. And just for our viewers, I think what we're going to try to do here is talk a little bit about this in non-spoilery kind of ways, and we'll warn you before we get into spoilers in case you really want to go and read this and not get anything ruined. So let's keep that in mind as we talk.
Cool.
So story, generally speaking, how would you describe this so far?
There is, our villain is named Mother, and she is a human trafficker to some degree, and has quite possibly, pretty definitely at this point, some ties to like the past of the Robins.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe the past of Batman himself. It's hard to say exactly whose past we're talking about here. Maybe all of their pasts.
Sure.
So I think my overall feel about this book is that it's one of those things where I would never tell somebody that just says, hey, I'd love to read some comics. I don't know anything about them. What should I pick up? This would never make that list. This is not one of those kind of things.
Are you saying because of all of the continuity mumbo jumbo that's
right, and that's definitely a big part of it.
Okay.
But it's also just a little fanboyish. It's
yeah, and I kind of get that because they have to. I mean, they have all these characters that people like really love, and they have to feel like they give them due diligence, so they're very characterized. Almost hyperbolic versions of these already, pretty hyperbolic characters, just to make sure that they get their little quips in and like, Jason would totally say this here. But I don't think it felt necessarily more forced than most team books kind of do.
Right. Right. And I wouldn't even recommend this to somebody who just doesn't follow any Batman stuff. If you want like Batman or Batman and Robin, there's so many other things that are more quintessential.
Sure.
And are also a lot of different things, more literary or more visceral or a better mystery. Like, this is one of those things that you have to be into Batman. I think you probably have to be into New 52 Batman, or at least into some of the other New 52 stuff. Maybe not even Batman, but if you're into like Grayson,
Yeah, there's a Red Hood title.
Red
for a while.
Hood.
I'm not sure if it's still out or not.
yeah, it's Red Hood and the Outlaws, or I think maybe it's Red Hood is running around with Starfire now. Maybe
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure on that part.
Also, not sure exactly what Drake is doing. I know he is like Red Robin now,
Right.
whatever. But again, the only time I've seen him has been in Batman Eternal, which was another big team up book with
Right.
the Bat family. So.
Right. Well, and the Bat family's so big that there's a lot of different people who could be into it for different reasons that are reading different parts of that world. Like I mean, we read Batman. I've started reading Grayson recently. It's pretty cool as well. And this ties in well with those, and we read Batgirl for the show.
Sure.
And this ties into all of those with what's going on. And I think is as good as each of those in its own kind of way, really. But again, it's not. It's not a Swamp Thing. It's not one of these titles that you're just going to say you got to read this to somebody who's not already invested in this world.
For sure, yeah. This is, I guess if you just need a good Batman title to read right now and you're already snagging like the regular Batman and maybe you're not a big fan of Detective Comics as we weren't,
Mm-hmm.
Like, this would be like my good, somebody that's been reading comics for a while. If they're already reading the Batman, this would be like my go-to second title for that.
Right. I think this might be for me as well. I think Grayson might be a little cooler now that I've started reading that as well. But this is pretty close to it, really. I think this is almost as good as that. And it has some things that it does better. It is a little more fan servicey, which can be cool. I mean, we rip on fanboys a lot on this show.
But sometimes it's nice, like the Wade Flash, I think is a good example where it just, you can't help but like get excited for like these storylines and these characters and stuff, because they're just so cool in your mind,
Right. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with loving a good characterization of a character that you've already enjoyed someone else's writing before. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's part of what makes comics good is when you see somebody write a character well. And we have a lot of good versions of a lot of these characters in this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I really like Red Hood in this.
Me too.
Sometimes he gives me a little bit of a Deadpool vibe, which makes me kind of... and I like Deadpool, but I don't want there to be a DC Deadpool.
Right. Yeah, when he's being funny, he's not nearly as good as when he's being acerbic, maybe? Is that a word, acerbic?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that's a good assessment. He's definitely... I don't want to say like he would necessarily win in a fight, whatever, because I don't want to get into that. But he's like tougher overall, I would say, than Deadpool. Like he's more into like, check out this new thing I'm gonna fucking murder you with, you know.
How do you feel about how the story is being told?
I mean, it's pretty long form, so realistically, we're just kind of getting into a little bit of that, and we have like probably a few mini mysteries that we're gonna get to before that. But it's kept me interested, you know. I've never felt lost at any point. I've never felt like anything was super, super obvious. Well, I mean, you know, maybe once or twice, but that's kind of, you know, I mean, you can't fool everybody all the time. Mm-hmm. So about you?
Kind of the same. I never felt lost at all, and I don't know a lot about the New 52 version of these characters. I didn't start reading Grayson until after this. This was part of the reason why I said, maybe I will pick up Grayson and look at it, because I like this, where Dick is at in this, and I've always been a fan of Dick Grayson anyway, so why aren't I reading that? But this made me go pick that up. But when I was reading this, I knew nothing about it. I didn't know really where any of these characters were, and it does a good job of pulling you right down into it and saying, okay, here's the status quo, here's what's going on. You get a quick... They do this really clever thing where when they introduce each of the characters, they really take the time to show what their current status quo is before they dump them into the story. Or if they do show up, it immediately kind of reins back and goes back to them. You know, they'll maybe jump in, you're like, who the hell are these guys? But then by the end of that little piece of the story, you know who they are and how they interact with everyone else.
Sure. And on that note, I think we should talk about the group dynamic that we have here, because I think that's really like the key point for this for a lot of people. So I guess we should just go through each of the characters and say like what their role in this kind of thing is. So let's start with Dick.
Right. Well, yeah. So this is, like you say, this is definitely a team book.
Right.
And really, what they're doing is they're making like a Robin team book of all of the past Robins. Let's make them all get together. Batgirl, Cassandra, all of the even vaguely Robin-esque characters. Let's smash them all together, turn it into a team
Cassandra's
book.
a new one, I think. But we do get Harper Row and the Spoiler Girl.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Which are all, characters that have been either trained by Batman or have wanted to be trained or have somehow been under his tutelage in one way or another.
Sure.
So, yeah, with Dick, Dick really does, at the beginning of this, he's playing the Batman role, I think. He's been Batman. He knows what it's like to try to be Batman.
The kind of parent leader, maybe kind of status.
Right, and also he's also a spy, so he understands intrigue a bit better than everyone else. He's really the one trying to unravel the mystery here.
One interesting note about that, though, is that he is not above scrutiny in any of this, whereas, they all regard Bruce as like, almost this figure of perfection. They'll call Dick out on his like shitty detective skills,
right.
or say he's more of a jump first and look for a net later kind of guy and stuff. So I kind of like that, and that the most authoritative figure that we have in here is really pretty openly fallible.
Right.
So that's nice.
Right. And then, so who do we have next? We got Tim Drake, Red Robin, in
Yeah.
here. And he's kind of the moral center of the team, I think, is kind of what he's played as here, which I think is a good way to use him. I think it's pretty well done. He's never well defined in my mind. I've never felt like Tim Drake was a heavily characteristically defined character. He's always a bit nebulous.
Yeah, and I feel like, the Red Robin thing is obviously an attempt to rebrand him, because they realize that. They realize, there's no Tim Drake solo book for a reason. So I think he's still kind of out there a little bit. Like, they know they want to make him cool. They don't know exactly how. He's definitely the most tech-savvy of the Robins, so that's cool. There's a girl in here that totally kicks his ass at that, though. But, a little bit later on that. He's a bit mildly creepy, I think.
Maybe a little, yeah. A little obsessive.
Yeah, just like bugging people's things, and then there's like some stuff about his parents in here, and like I don't know really what the hell to think of Tim.
Right.
It's almost like a bothersome kind of thing.
I like the character though. I like what they're doing with him. I like how he's being portrayed here. He's interesting.
I care more about him than I have in past things that I've read with him. Usually it's just who gives a shit. It's Tim Drake.
Yeah.
So speaking of characters that people are known for not giving a shit about, let's talk about Jason Todd.
Jason Todd. I love him in this.
I think he's great.
Yeah, I think really the Jason Todd aspect of this is probably the high point characterization-wise.
Yeah.
He's funny and interesting, and just the way he kind of cuts through the bullshit is a great Jason Todd. I think that's exactly what he should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. He's probably the most reckless, I would say. Dangerous in kind of a cool way. It's kind of weird, like him and Dick's dynamic together, because they are like the two oldest ones, and they both have a bit of that authoritative thing about it. It seems like him maybe a little bit less so, just because he's just more set on doing whatever the hell he wants, which is cool.
Yeah, it makes for a good dynamic on the team. He's kind of playing the anti-hero, which is what he always is. He's that anti-hero character.
And again, a bit of the Deadpool in there, just sprinkled. And then we have Bluebird, who's one of our new 52 characters. So did you know anything about her?
No, this is my first foray into anything involving Bluebird at all.
She popped up in Batman Eternal, and I thought she started there. I wasn't sure. Maybe she's in some other stuff, but basically she's super tech savvy, and she wanted to be the new Robin, Batman's sidekick. I think he saved her and her brother one time, and then after that she kept trying to like repay him for it by helping, and he was like, really, just stay the hell out of the way. And she's like, fuck you, I'm gonna fucking help you. So through that kind of building, and then at the end he was like, okay, well, if you're gonna do this, like, I need to train you. And then of course, you know, shit happened to Bruce, and then, you know, she just kept doing her thing.
So that character, I don't feel like has been particularly forward in this series. In fact, I would say the biggest problem with this series that I have is that it doesn't really focus on the female characters nearly as much as I think it could with the dynamic. I think it could be way more interesting if they would really bring them in and have them really screwing up that dynamic of the three Robins. Because the three Robins work together, they know each other really well, and you get that vibe of, even though they disagree, it's very clean disagreement. They already know where they all stand, and you get that a lot in here, where it's like, well, that's Jason, that's the way he's going to be, whatever, you know.
Right.
But they really could be using the females that are kind of set aside. They've always been set aside because Bruce has kind of a thing for young boys. You know, not being creepy, but he does. He sees himself in them.
Right.
So they've always been kind of pushed aside, and I love the idea of bringing them in and working directly with the Robins, but it's not panning out yet.
I think it was issue 5 when Batgirl showed up. I was really excited for it. I was like, all right, they're going to bring in some more like established characters, and you know, this will definitely change the whole like team dynamic. And then 6, I don't think she really showed up too much, if at all.
Right.
So yeah, I don't really know what the hell happened with that. And then the two girls, like the Spoiler and then Bluebird. Spoiler Chick's kind of lame. I mean, she was really important to the Batman Eternal storyline, but she's just not enough of a character yet.
And she was somewhat important in Catwoman recently, right? Like, she's been in and out of that.
Yeah, but just personality-wise, like, you don't... I mean, just for these little glimpses of personality that we've gotten, you know, which have been little glimpses, it's just not there, you know. Right. I don't feel like attached to her at all. Sometimes it's kind of like annoying when she shows up because it's like, oh, you're this spoiler girl, you know, whatever. Right.
Well, and for some reason I mean, I don't want to rewrite the story. I hate when people do that. Yeah. But you know, they have all the women doing their thing and all the guys off doing their thing, and it seems like a lost opportunity. Like, they really could have played with that a lot more and made it a lot more interesting. And
yeah, and the fact that they are new girls, like, why are they, like, off doing their own thing? Why aren't they, like, integral to, like, what's happening, you know? Right. Because the Robins are like, you know, we need to include you in things and show you, like, how shit's done, you know, up your game and whatnot, because we've been doing this for, you know, years and you're brand new. And they just don't. It's like you said, it's like a set aside, like, this is what the girls are doing and this is what the boys are doing. And I think both sides suffer for it.
I do too. But it does feel, as we get through issue 6, that maybe the idea is to bring them in slowly and slowly show how important they are to the whole thing, and hopefully elevate these characters, because I actually think they're pretty cool characters. Even Spoiler.
I think Bluebird's pretty cool.
Even Spoiler, who is kind of annoying. I like that about a character. I like a character that you don't just love. I think that on a team book, that is a great character to have right shoved into your face, like the one that causes the issue because you're like, ugh, really? And I think we're going to get more of that moving forward. I hope so. All right, so I think at this point is where we're going to get into a little bit of spoiler territory.
Not just the character, but actual... Yeah.
Right, actually spoiling the story, because we're going to talk a little bit about maybe our theory of where this is going, and also just how we feel about where it's been so far. And to do that, we have to talk about what's happened. So, generally speaking, I guess this story is broken up into the past and present. I would say it's probably like 25% in the past. Does that sound about right? And about 75% in the present. So, first of all, do you like both parts of this? How do you feel about them?
Yes, I do like both parts of them. And I'm really excited to see how they end up coming together.
I think the past stuff is what sets Dick as the main protagonist of the story, because every time we go to the past,
it's his story.
It's him and Batman together. So that's why in the other 75%, that's sort of the hook to get us following Dick Grayson in this story. And I think that works well. And he's probably the obvious choice. I'm not sure if he's the choice I would have went with if I was writing this story, but
As the lead character?
as the lead protagonist,
Really?
I may have actually gone with probably Red Robin. Honestly, I think he probably
Tim?
would have been the most interesting aspect to go with. But again, that's
See, in my mind, a Tim Drake book would just be kind of like techno ramblings in a Silver Agey kind of way.
well,
Uh,
yeah. I mean, that would be the terrible way to do it, which is probably the way it would have got done.
Okay,
So
yeah.
But I feel like we have as much as I love Dick Grayson. There's so much focus on Dick Grayson these days. He's in everything. He's almost become, the Wolverine or the Deadpool of DC at this point. He shows up everywhere. He's super important. Everything seems to linchpin around him all the time. So having another book that's Dick Grayson, I don't know. Maybe not the best call.
Sure.
But it's still, that's that. So let's talk about the actual story and what's going on then. So we have this mother character, and apparently she custom makes
Right.
people.
So it's kind of like Crime Alley over and over again. Like they send out assassins to like gun down some kid's parents, like right in front of them. And then somehow through that traumatic experience, and fear toxin is obviously going to play a role in that, probably very closely related, they engineer them to be these like new people, whoever they want to be.
Right, which are sort of like mail order people.
Right. And we find out pretty early on that, so the mother can like take control over people and make them do whatever the hell. So we see Batman actually killing somebody's parents. In my mind, there's like no doubt that they were Cassandra's parents.
Yeah.
They have to be.
I think they may have been Batwing's parents.
Do you think so?
Could be. It's hard to say. The interesting thing, I think, here is the people that she controls, are they the people she created?
See, that's another good question. Like we don't know.
Right? And we have Bruce, who has the same origin. So are they possibly getting at a secret origin of Batman here?
Right.
Where the reason she can control him when need be is because he was custom made to become
that is
who
his
he is.
backstory. Is his parents were gunned down in an alley.
Right. So I think maybe that's where we're going here. The other possibility, of course, is that somehow the Robins themselves were all custom made.
And they're kind of toying with that theory in the book.
They're all worried that that's the case. in
Yeah,
here.
which makes me think that it's not the case.
Right. I think
Because-
that's probably a false lead.
Mhm.
So what do you think? Do you think we're going to get something like that? Do you think this is going to end up being someone's origin?
Maybe. I was definitely curious about Tim there for a second, and then when they showed his actual fake reality that he made for his parents or whatever, I was like, okay, this is, yeah, there's something going on here. I'm not sure. I think that thing is going to come back. I think Tim's creepy little secrets are going to come back in some way.
Yeah, probably so. I also want to say, talking just about the story in general, because I'm looking over here as you're flipping through it. I hate to jump around, but
Oh, sure.
the past stuff, I think, is maybe my favorite stuff in here.
Yeah.
I really like these early stories that we're getting about Robin. Like, we're getting this old school Batman and Robin book inside this as just like a little extra thing,
Yeah, a
almost.
little bonus feature.
Yeah. It can almost be like a backup. But we just get it interspersed throughout here. And as we get further in, we see a little bit more about how it ties in directly, which is pretty cool. I think that structure is done really well here.
Yeah, definitely. It was interesting. I was just looking. I thought, first glance, because they show you in the first issue, like, the kid whose parents, like, Batman killed. And I remembered it being a girl, but it's a boy.
It is a boy.
So
yeah.
it's probably not Cassandra.
And it's in Egypt, Cairo.
Right.
So it's African or Middle Eastern of some sort, which is what leads me to think it could have possibly been Batwing.
Makes a lot more sense now. Yeah. If it had been a girl, then Cassandra would have been the one.
Sure. So, overall, what do you think? What should we tell our loyal viewers here?
mean, it is a weekly, and it's not like a 10 out of 10. If you just like reading comics and you want something that's pretty good that you can look forward to reading every week, I would get it. I mean, I intend to keep reading it, you know.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I think it's a good solid 7, probably an 8 if you're really into Batman and Robin. If you're not into Batman and Robin, it's probably a 7, maybe even a 6
And a half.
Yeah, maybe, you know, if you're just super not into that stuff.
I like it. I think the plot and everything is super clever, you know, and the little side conversations and stuff they have and things being brought up, like, well, you know, is Batman crazy for, you know, having all these like kid sidekicks and stuff?
Right.
So even just based off like super shallow surface level fanboy stuff, even if you're not a fan, I think it's pretty interesting just for that.
It's pretty good.
But then the characters being well written and stuff on top of that, if you're looking at it from like a literary standpoint, yeah, I would say maybe like 6 to 7 range. But
it's pretty pulpy.
Yeah.
How it's written.
But you can't help but get a little bit fanboyish,
Right.
you know, in this. Like, again, like even if you're not a big fan of the characters, like you become one pretty quick.
Yeah, it's good pulpy comic book, and it's easy to pick up and read. Like you don't need to be heavily invested to read it, but I think it helps. It'll make you like it more, but it's not necessary to follow the story and keep track of it. And it very well may get you more into the idea of reading some more of this stuff. Maybe some of the even better runs that are out there connected to it.
For sure.
All right, well, I think that probably wraps that one up for us. Probably. I think it has to because we're ending the video. So, as always, next Wednesday, we have our weekly poll list review. That's where we take a look at
Our poll list.
Our poll list.
Review it.
Oh, that's crazy. We did a good job naming that.
We did.
Right?
It's very self-descriptive.
It's
it's
exactly what we do.
like Funkadelic the band. You know exactly what they sound like as soon as you hear the name.
That's exactly like us.
Yeah, we're Funkadelic.
We are exactly like Funkadelic the band. Which one of us is George Clinton?
Dude, come on.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Next Monday, a week from today, we're going to look at Runaways Volume 2. We've been kind of pushing that for a little bit. We've been telling them that we're going to read it. We're reading it. We are going to look at as much of it as we can. Pretty excited about it. I've loved it so far.
Yeah.
So
good.
check that out. That's Brian K. Vaughan, by the way, which
It's kind of a big deal.
is now kind of a superstar. He's got a show that's coming up on what channel is that? It's FX, right?
Why
the
I was
Last
gonna
Man.
say ABC Family, but
Maybe, Why the Last Man, ABC Family Edition. That would be perfect.
starring Drake.
So hopefully they'll tune back in and watch that because that's good for us. I mean, I suppose it's not really hopefully for them. Anyway, like us and subscribe below, right? Do we want to? Yeah, we want you to do that. And then we got Twitter and Facebook and all that. I get sick of saying all this. Can't you guys just do it? Why do I have to tell you over and over again? God.
Wait.